Yaga's Horror Stories channel. I'm going to share a spooky bar story with you. Turn off the lights, crawl under the blankets, and get ready to listen. Let's get started. My name is Sully. Run a bar a ways out from anywhere, affectionately called. The spaces in between don't judge. I didn't fucking name it. My companion is Cheddar, Bernie's mountain dog that understands the words attack, kill, stun, and defend, but not the word breakfast. We try to create a welcoming but chill atmosphere for the patrons that stumble through here every now and then. To be honest, we have to, because to say my clientele is unusual would be a gross understatement. Kinds of folks we get here are looking for an escape, a place where they can talk their troubles away for a nominal fee and won't be judged. I guess that doesn't separate it from many other bars out there, does it? Well, not only am I a superb listener, but we have a wide selection of unusual beverages. I like to think of them as mood enhancers or, depending on the patron's desire, dampeners. I've gotten together with some unrecognized genius brewery masters, working out deals to sell their phenomenal mixtures at a unique place. It brings the customers in by the droves to seek their poison of choice that they cannot find elsewhere, and the brewery get exposure. Everyone wins. I guess for me, I knew sharing some of the stories I've picked up along the way would be of interest to you. And who knows, maybe you'll stop by yourselves one day, but you don't pay in cash here. You pay with stories. If you've ever worked in a bar before, you know the happy-go-lucky environment you see on a show like Cheers or on a weekend filled with excitable youths is nothing like the dreary reality of a bar. Midweek Tuesday will forever serve as my motivator to abstain from booze, and it's one of these midweek Tuesdays that I want to begin our stories. First patron is a bona fide regular, Catherine Letty. She spends every waking moment with her lips around a bottle of Peruvian beer called Mama Killer's Pulse Thumper. The contents designed to bring your mood and excitement to such a level that you felt the world around you was virtually throbbing. For someone like Letty, though, it simply evened her out. I liked Letty. She was a woman who could not stop talking about her life, but always seemed to have something interesting tucked up her sleeve, or a way about her that turned a mundane story into one of intrigue. She once spent 15 minutes telling me about the watering of her plants and the way her system worked, before taking a left turn into how her giant pitcher plant was fed some of her experimental alcohol and it ate her cat. I got home one day and Methuselah, was just gone, Letty said between swigs, her youthful face marked by stressed lines, bags under her eyes, and a mess of unkempt brown hair. Most of it was tied back with a clip, but her fringe left streaks across her face, matching the booze trickling down her chin as she took another gulp. With a name like that, maybe it was a godsend, I thought, wiping down the counter, glancing at her, and offering a vocal acknowledgement of my condolences. She finished the bottle and slammed it down, swaying as she looked up at me. "You know why I came here, Sully?" she asked, her eyes half closed and a grin spreading across her face as the effect started to hit. Same reason everyone else comes to a bar like mine, I suppose. We want to be somewhere away from prying eyes and drink without being judged. I shrugged, letting the rag fall over my shoulder as I stretched out my hands. Maybe the booze too. I can't say we're not unique in that respect. I came here because I had nowhere else to go where I could wallow, she declared, drawing out the words nowhere and wallow for dramatic effect. Spinning in a circle, she pushed a few coins my way, and I grabbed another pulse thumper for her, but she shook her head before I could open it. "No, I want something else, Sully. I want the pincer." She pointed a shaky finger to the shelf behind me, where my top shelf bottles sat, an assortment of bottles in all shapes and sizes, each with unique labels and logos. I followed the path of her finger, which landed on a brown bottle with a square center. The liquid inside settled neatly, then flared out into jagged glass spikes that formed to huge pincers. If you looked at it through the beer goggles I was 99% sure Letty was wearing, the glass could pass for a stag beetle. I didn't grab it. Instead, I placed both my hands on the counter and pushed her money back toward her. "You don't pay for top-shelf goods with money. Letty, you tell me a story, and if it's good, I'll pour you that drink." She sighed, a hiccup escaping her lips. "My money's not good enough for you." I smiled and shook my head. "Nope, but your stories are. So, tell me what happened that day when you came home from work. It was raining, right? You'd forgotten your raincoat. How did you? Yeah, it was freezing out, and I had to grab some supplies. They said Hurricane Xander was coming in, and I wanted to be ready. Her eyes sobered and her hands started shaking. She tried to steady them as she stared down at the floor. I thought he'd be okay for just a few minutes. It was just around the corner. I stared at Letty for a moment, twirling my mustache. Cheddar was asleep beside me, drooling onto the floor as he clutched his favorite stuffed animal in his mouth. I glanced at Letty's posture, the tremble in her limbs, the way she fiddled with her sleeves, and the hesitation in her words. Something wasn't right. I started to wonder what was really going on. I sighed and reached for a bottle on the top shelf. It was a delicate orange at the bottom, shaped like an egg with deep cracks running down the middle, letting a brighter yellow peek through. At the top of the bottle, a baby chick's head emerged, blind and screaming. This mouth serving as the spout for the drink. A label across the bottle read, Abacus and Sons Whirlwind Milchum Concoction. 1 shot and you'll feel the day start anew. I pulled it down and grabbed a shot glass from under the bar. It was clear, with the initials SR written across it in elegant black calligraphy. I poured the drink as Letty stared blankly, and then I slid it toward her. This isn't a pincer, she said, eyeing the bubbling orange liquid in front of her. I came here for the pincer because I heard it. What it does doesn't matter anymore, Letty, I cut her off. As your expert bartender, I've decided this is the better choice for you. Trust me. I pushed a button on my phone and nodded at her as she hesitated, but then took the shot. An audible hiss escaped her chest as she exhaled a plume of yellow smoke. Your taxi will be here in a minute. Time to go home, I said, stepping away to prep the bar for the next customer. I don't. What does this do? She asked, realization hitting her as she buried her head in her hands. I feel faint. Why? Why did I do this? Go home, Letty, I said, my tone almost cold. If you have any trouble, you can come back, okay? She struggled to her feet, rubbing her arms as she made her way to the door, muttering a small thanks, I guess, before she left. I assure you, I was doing her a favor. Letty was about to make a huge mistake, and I didn't want to see her get hurt. A few minutes later, the door swung open as a skinny hipster sauntered in, no older than 25, with thick black hair slicked back into an undercut. His Armani suit, which probably turned heads elsewhere, didn't impress me one bit. He looked around the bar, scoffing a couple of times as he took in the signs and plaques on the walls, rolling his eyes at the whole place before sitting down in front of me. This was Gomez de Stefano, an intolerable prick I didn't want anywhere near. Letty, the guy, had more social problems than an incel with a dating profile. Dana's special yesterday, he said, looking down his nose at Cheddar and back at me. And make sure your damn dog stays away from my drink, Gomez spat. If he comes near my suit, I swear I'll kick him. Cheddar, half asleep, barely opens his eyes at the sound. He lets out a quiet protest before burying his face back into his paws, going back to sleep. I chuckled to myself as I dug through the bottles under the bar. You'd be on the floor in 5 seconds, begging for him not to chew off your salami slice. Gomez, I called from underneath the counter, finally finding the cooler. Inside were a pair of aged vials, one side a deep blue, the other an intense magenta. The label read, Estefania Brewery Co. presents the ultimate emotional experience in Janus. All emotions. 2 sides, 1 bottle. I pulled it out and motioned to Gomez. Which side would you like? I asked. He picked the blue, and I obliged, pouring it into a tall glass with some ice. What brings you to my ever-so-fine establishment, Gomez? I asked, setting the cooler down on the counter. Knowing I'd need more of these soon, Gomez drank like a fish once he started. I needed somewhere to go, you know, and this place is the only one I was told wouldn't judge me. His eyes welled up with tears, and he looked downright miserable, pathetic even. But since he was drinking that concoction, I didn't have much sympathy for him. What do you want to talk about? Is it the same thing you brought up last time? I asked, watching carefully for any tears that might spill onto my beautiful mahogany counter. The stealing thing. I don't feel too bad about that, he said, wiping his nose. It's what I saw while I was stealing that messed with me. Don't know if I'll ever sleep again. God, I should have done something. He buried his head in his arms and sobbed. Even Cheddar, who had been lounging in the back, gave a snort, stretched, and walked off. Even he wasn't buying this act. I leaned forward, my arms folded, and pressed him for more. "What did you see that night, Gomez?" He wiped his face, composed himself, and looked up at me, his face still a mess of snot and tears. The apartment I was scoping out was simple. Nothing fancy. It wasn't in a busy area, and the woman who lived there wasn't a threat. Neighbors minded their business. It was perfect for the job. I could get in, get out, and my client would pay nicely. I was supposed to grab a specific item at a specific time, but I saw an opportunity and decided to get it earlier because of the weather. The weather! I narrowed my eyes as it began to widen, clearly impressed with himself. Hurricane season. There was a fresh one coming in, and it was even quieter than usual. So I stepped into the apartment after the woman had left, no issues at all. I started doing my thing, searching for her lockbox. But when I went into the bedroom, I heard something from the living room. It was this awful sound like a bear rummaging through trash, but wetter, wailing, crunching. Then I saw a shadow cast over the wall, hunched over, its jaws tearing into whatever was there, pincer-like arms holding it down, and mandibles ripping and tearing at something. Gomez retched, taking a moment to steady himself. I listened intently, a strange, uncomfortable sense of familiarity creeping through me. I can't get the damn image out of my head even now. I grabbed what I needed and got the hell out of there. Handed the stuff over to the client, never said a word. I came here to forget, to get that image out of my fucking head. He shook in his seat, then reached for the other half of the bottle with the magenta liquid. He downed it so fast that some splashed onto his suit. "You're this upset over someone's kitten getting eaten? Don't buy it," I said, reaching for a bottle from the top shelf. It was a golden heart with vines growing around it and a rusted key in the center, emitting a beautiful oaken hue. The label read, "Winchester's very own hemlock-infused adjudicator. Your first step in the right direction was choosing this drink." His bravado returned, though his knee shook slightly. He laughed at me as I asked, "What can I say? I'm a softie." Hearing a kitten screaming was upsetting. Besides, who wouldn't be freaked out seeing a shadow eating it, huh? I thought you types were supposed to be insightful. I grabbed a shot glass, and after turning the key on the heart, a satisfying click rang out. I poured the shimmering contents for him. "It's on the house, Gomez," I replied dryly, watching him look uncertain. "I gotta get moving soon, Chief. Can't be having too many." He pushed the drink back toward me, hesitation now clear in his voice, not even bothering to ask for the rest of the Janus. "Oh, you won't need to worry. Taxes aren't available yet. Sit and drink. I'll give you a little insider info." I smiled, leaning my knuckles on the counter as I studied the pathetic figure in front of me. He hesitated but eventually took the adjudicator drink and downed it heartily. No sooner had he done so than his whole body froze. His limbs no longer obeyed him, his eyes locked onto me, and his body betrayed him entirely. I stopped smiling as I spoke aloud, clearing the mess from the bar. "You're a superb thief, Gomez. That's how you afford the suits, the nice cars, the temporary friends who feign interest in sex just to get loans. But you're a very, very bad liar." I stared into his face as I finished my sentence, disgust clear on my expression. He looked back at me, fear slowly creeping across his face. "You want to know how I know you didn't see a kitten in that apartment? How I know you saw more than you're letting on and why you didn't report it?" He blinks at me once, a confirmation. "Well, first, we need to talk about what you just drank. It's a drink that will determine what happens to you next. One of my own special blends designed to root out cancerous cells like you. If you've got nothing to hide, you'll feel elation beyond your wildest dreams and you'll get into that taxi without issue. But if you feel even a shred of guilt after I'm done talking, well, ... I walk around the bar, placing my hands on his shoulders, leaning in as I speak to him. "Let's come back to that later, shall we? I know you didn't see a kitten because I just served your victim a few minutes ago. And funny enough, she said it was a kitten too, though with some confusion. She came here to suffer, you know, not entirely willingly, but that was her intention. Don't know what you gave her, but it took a very special blend to help her memory recover. I'm not even sure if that was the right call, but it had to happen. She wake up, and everything she went through will be there, waiting for her like a fucking parasite." I leaned closer, my voice dropping. "But I did her a favor. Gomez, I gave her a chance to take a different path than the one you and your client had planned for her. Gomez began to tremble, his entire body bouncing as his pupils dilated, his head shaking. I don't doubt you have no idea who or what your client is, what's in Letty's lockbox, or that you're really, really sorry. But people like you never learn. You'll save your own skin the moment this happens again. And unfortunately for you, I know it will. The thing I can't forgive though, myself, if I let you go, because you saw something in that room, and you still ignored any impulse to do the right thing. You saw something that would turn anyone else's stomach, push their fight or flight instincts, and still chose yourself. I turned my back to him and poured myself a magenta shot of Janus, downing it as I heard the sizzling of Gomez's body growing louder. You deserve what you get. That form that once housed Gomez began to melt away. His skin and bones burned as his limbs sagged and fell from his torso, continuing to burn and melt into the floor. Gomez tried to scream through the foam clogging his throat, but all that came out was a soft gurgle as his head sunk into his torso, which melted into a viscous sludge that hardened as it settled. Cheddar walked back in, nudging my hand with his head. I pet him absently, my face locked in a permanent scowl, as I stared at the ultrasound photo Letty had left behind. You saw a crib, Gomez. You saw a fucking crib.